Did you know that Hitler had a detailed plan for a post-war world, a world where the Nazi ideology reigned supreme? In this video, we'll delve into the depths of Hitler's twisted vision, exploring the chilling reality of what could have been. From the subjugation of entire races to the establishment of a global Aryan empire, Hitler's ambitions knew no bounds. We'll examine his plans for territorial expansion, cultural domination, the systematic eradication of those deemed undesirable, and the weapons he planned to use to conquer and control the world. Prepare to be shocked and disturbed as we uncover the horrifying truth of Hitler's intended utopia. This is not a history lesson, it's a glimpse into the darkest recesses of a madman's mind. In the twisted mind of Adolf Hitler, a world dominated by the Nazi regime would have been a stark and unforgiving one. His vision was one of racial supremacy, where the Aryan race would reign supreme over all others. Under Nazi rule, the world would have been divided into a hierarchy of races, with Aryans at the top and Jews, Roma, and other undesirables at the bottom. Those deemed inferior would have been subjected to persecution, enslavement, and even extermination. Hitler's vision for the world was one of totalitarianism, where every aspect of life would be controlled by the state. Individual freedom would be non-existent, and any dissent would be swiftly crushed. The Nazi regime would have been a militaristic one, with a focus on conquest and expansion. Hitler's ambitions extended far beyond Germany, and he envisioned a world where the Nazi flag flew over every continent. In Hitler's twisted vision, the world would have been a place of constant conflict and strife. His ideology was based on hatred and division, and his reign would have been one of terror and oppression. Had the Nazis won World War II, the world would have been a much darker place. The horrors of the Holocaust would have been multiplied on a global scale, and millions of people would have suffered under the yoke of Nazi tyranny. It is important to remember the evils of Nazism, so that we can never allow such a dark ideology to take hold again. The world must remain vigilant against the forces of hatred and intolerance, lest we repeat the mistakes of the past. In addition to the persecution of minorities, Hitler's vision for the world also included the following: the suppression of all forms of dissent and opposition, the glorification of war and militarism, the control over all aspects of the economy by the state, the indoctrination of the population into Nazi ideology. Hitler's vision for the world was one of darkness and despair. It is a vision that must never be allowed to come to pass. Had Adolf Hitler emerged triumphant from the ashes of World War II, his insatiable lust for dominion would have reshaped the very fabric of existence. His vision of a greater Germany, stretching from the frozen tundras of Scandinavia to the sun-drenched shores of North Africa, would have cast a dark and oppressive shadow over the world. In Europe, the jackboot of Nazi tyranny would have crushed the fragile flames of freedom. From the cobblestone streets of Paris to the windswept plains of Poland, the swastika would have flown defiantly, a stark reminder of the Reich's ironclad grip. The Soviet Union, that bastion of communism so reviled by Hitler, would have been reduced to a smoldering ruin. Millions would have perished in the Nazi onslaught, their lives snuffed out like candles in the wind. Those who remained would have been enslaved, forced to toil for the glory of the Third Reich. Africa, with its vast resources and untapped potential, would have become a feeding ground for the Nazi war machine. The continent's riches would have been plundered, its people subjugated. The dream of African independence would have been extinguished, replaced by the nightmare of Nazi domination. In Asia, Hitler would have sought to forge an unholy alliance with Japan, a partnership fueled by mutual hatred of the democracies. Together, they would have carved up the continent, their ambitions unchecked. Even the Americas would not have been immune to the Nazi menace. Through propaganda and subversion, Hitler would have sought to sow discord and division within the United States, weakening its resolve and undermining its ability to resist his ambitions. Had Hitler achieved his goals, the world would have been plunged into a new dark age. Freedom would have been but a distant memory, replaced by the iron fist of tyranny. Hope would have been extinguished, replaced by despair. The very notion of human decency would have been trampled underfoot as the Nazi juggernaut rolled on, crushing everything in its path. This is the chilling reality of what might have been had Adolf Hitler emerged victorious from World War II, a world teetering on the brink of annihilation, a world where darkness reigned supreme. However, to conquer and control the world after the war, Hitler had weapons underway to aid him in this. V-2 rocket. The V-2 rocket was a long-range ballistic missile that was developed by Nazi Germany during World War II. It was the first ballistic missile to be used in combat, and it was capable of reaching targets over 300 kilometers away. The V-2 was a terror weapon that was used to bombard Allied cities, and it caused widespread death and destruction. Atomic bomb. Hitler was aware of the potential of atomic weapons, and he ordered German scientists to develop their own atomic bomb. However, the German atomic bomb program was never able to produce a working bomb before the end of the war. Heavy tanks. The Nazis developed a number of heavy tanks during World War II, such as the Tiger I and Tiger II tanks. These tanks were heavily armored with powerful guns, and they were a major threat to Allied forces. Jet aircraft. The Nazis were also pioneers in the development of jet aircraft. The Messerschmitt Me-626 was the first operational jet fighter aircraft in the world and gave the Luftwaffe a significant advantage over Allied air forces. Had the war continued, the Nazis would have likely developed even more advanced jet aircraft, which would have made them even more dominant in the air. Chemical and biological weapons. The Nazis conducted research into a number of chemical and biological weapons, and they used these weapons on a limited scale during World War II. For example, they used nerve gas to kill thousands of people at the Majdanek concentration camp. In addition to these controversial and unconventional weapons, Hitler was also interested in developing new and more exotic weapons. For example, he was interested in developing a death ray that could be used to destroy enemy aircraft and cities. Fortunately, none of the above came, as Adolf Hitler's flaws played a significant role in his downfall. While his charisma and determination enabled him to rise to power, his hubris, lack of strategic thinking, and inability to delegate ultimately led to his demise. Hubris. Hitler's inflated ego often led him to make poor decisions. He was convinced of his own infallibility and often disregarded the advice of his advisors. This was evident in his decision to invade the Soviet Union, a move that ultimately proved to be a fatal mistake. Lack of strategic thinking. Hitler was a brilliant tactician, but he often lacked the ability to think strategically. He was prone to making impulsive decisions without considering the long-term consequences. This was evident in his decision to declare war on the United States, a move that brought the full weight of the American industrial machine into the war. Inability to delegate. Hitler was a micromanager who insisted on controlling every aspect of the war effort. This led him to becoming bogged down in details and unable to focus on the bigger picture. This was evident in his decision to personally oversee the design and production of weapons, a task that would have been better left to his generals. In addition to these flaws, Hitler was also a victim of his own success. His early victories in the war led him to believe that he was invincible. This overconfidence blinded him to the realities of the situation and led him to make a number of critical mistakes. As a result of these flaws, Hitler was unable to achieve his ultimate goal of world domination. His downfall serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris, the importance of strategic thinking, and the need for effective delegation.